All right. Good morning, guys. Welcome to Geography Online Edition. Um, let's go ahead and get started. Okay. So, last time and the time before, we were talking about South America. So, we did some stuff with the physical geography of South America. You guys did those maps. And then last time, we did those brochures. Um, if you still haven't turned yours in, best way to turn them in right now is to either take a picture of it, email it to me, or take a picture and submit that to Canvas. You can also get on Canvas, and I have it in like the Google Doc form so that you can make a copy if you want to just type it all up and turn it in as like a digital copy. So make sure you do that. But today we're talking about natural disasters. So we're looking at what are the causes of natural disasters and what impact do they have on people. So this whole time that we're talking about it today, think about the people. So first of all, what's going on? Second, how is this impacting people? So first to start off, it's gonna feel a little bit like a science lesson. So here we have our Earth's guts. We have the inner core, the outer core, the mantle, and the crust. Right, these are the insides of the Earth. Now why I have this is it's going to play a pretty big role in things like plate tectonics, which have impacts on a lot of different types of natural disasters. Right, so plate tectonics. So this is the system of activities that move the Earth and produce oceans and mountain ranges. As far as like where they're located, um, most of the plates move about 4 inches a year. So here we have a little, I don't know which direction it is. We have a little map, right, showing some of the prominent plates that are part of plate tectonics. I want you guys especially to pay attention to the Pacific plate. That one's going to be a big deal today. So, right, take a look at where the Pacific plate is. Take a second, right, find it, and take a look at it. Okay. All right. So with plate tectonics, right, so we have these pieces of crust, right, of the Earth's crust that are moving. Um, Part of plate tectonics, we see seafloor spreading, where we have new crust coming up through that mantle, right, becoming magma, splitting it and spreading, right, making the seafloor bigger essentially, right? And then when that seafloor meets our continental boundary, it's going to go under, right, and have that subduction. So you guys may remember this from like your Earth Systems class. I think I've talked about it in here before, but if not, right? So seafloor spreading, right? We're looking at this plate tectonics, these movements of the plates. Here's kind of a different picture. So sometimes we see, right, seafloor spreading, right, which is with the ocean, there's water on top of it. Other times we'll see like continental spreading, where you'll have like the crust melting, right, and spreading that way. So it could be continental or oceanic crust. Subduction is when a plate goes underneath another plate. So once again, so here in the middle we have our seafloor spreading, right? More and more crust is being made. And there's only so much room. So here we have the oceanic crust going under this continental crust. This is subduction. Then it comes down and melts and, right, could end up becoming part of this new oceanic crust. Subduction is when a plate goes underneath another plate. So, we have our root word sub. So think like submarine, a subway, right? So sub means like underneath, right? So subduction is where you have one plate going underneath another plate. So So here's a picture, right? We have oceanic crust, we have subduction zone. When the oceanic crust melts, sometimes we'll see it come up and create like mountain chains, volcanic mountain chains. And usually we see those along the coasts. We also see convergent boundaries. So this is where two plates come together. There are actually three types of convergence. We have our continental and oceanic, or oceanic and oceanic, or continental and continental. That can be a pretty big deal because they're going to behave differently when they collide into each other with the different types. So continental oceanic always goes under the continental plate. The oceanic plate is usually heavier. It's more dense. The material it is made out of is more dense. So it will usually be the one that is going underneath the continental plate, creating some subduction. So right, here's another picture, if that helps. We see continental oceanic convergence in South America. So the Andes mountain range is actually, the whole reason it's there is because of this oceanic plate that is going underneath the continental plate, right? So we have that Pacific plate going underneath, and that causes a lot of mountains, especially volcanoes, right, in that part of the world. So a lot of the Andes mountains are actually volcanic, and that's how they're formed, right, is because of this continental oceanic convergence. Oceanic convergence, so it's where you have two oceanic plates coming together. Usually this is where we see things like our island chains or archipelagos, if you remember when we talked about that at the very beginning of the year. So, right, similar kind of a thing, right? One oceanic plate will kind of tuck and go under, creating that subduction. And then we'll also create usually like island chains as well as like trenches by those island chains. So here, a great example of oceanic convergence would be the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. So those are the islands that are right. You can see my cursor of my mouse right here. Continental convergence is where we have two continental plates crashing into each other. So a lot of times with our continental convergence, we get huge mountain ranges. Great example of this would be the Himalayas. So here is a picture of Mount Everest, right, in the Himalayas. So Himalayas are really tall, really rocky, and they're created by, right, the Indian plate crash, which is a continental plate crashing up to like the Asian plate. So, right, they're coming together and they're making that mountain come up. We also see other types of things going on at the different plate boundaries, right, where they meet. So the first is transforms, where we get the plates that are shifting, right, alongside of each other, and it's not smooth, right, it's really slow. Sometimes they get caught and then they move all at once, and that can create like earthquakes. If you've ever heard of faults before, we also get faulting. Here's some pictures of some different types of faults. So we have your reverse fault, a normal fault, and a strike-slip fault. And here in Utah, we actually have some faults, which is why we have like earthquake risks around here. We'll go further. All right, so finally, so what is a natural disaster, right? So first we're going to break it up to what is a disaster, right? A disaster is something that's really terrible, right? It's a really hazardous event. It's usually we see lots of loss of like materials or life, right? So it's a hazardous event with widespread losses that exceeds the ability of the affected area to cope. So this is where something bad happens, but it's so bad that the area can't just handle it on their own, right? They need help from other places. A natural disaster is where the cause of that disaster is going to be with the climate, with the weather, or geological. So we're going to see like floods, hurricanes, droughts, landslides, volcanoes, tsunamis, earthquakes. This picture is a sinkhole that was in Guatemala City in May of 2010, and some of these larger sinkholes, right, you could say, I mean, that's a disaster, right? Here's another kind of definition of a natural disaster, so you can think about it in a different way. This says any natural process or phenomenon that may cause loss of life, injury, or other health impacts, property damage, loss of livelihoods and services, social and economic disruption, or environmental damage. Here's kind of a graph, right, a visual. So we have natural versus man-made. Right, natural disasters could be like asteroid impacts, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, cyclones, tornadoes. This quasi-natural means like sometimes it's natural, but sometimes humans have like part of it too. So for example, the landslide, well, why did the landslide happen, right? Sometimes it's natural, sometimes it's because humans have done something that can trigger a landslide. Floods, same thing. Drought, same thing, right? Using too much of water in different places. Bushfires, right? It could be lit by human or it could be lightning. So it's that weird kind of middle zone where it's like, I mean, it is natural, but also, right, there's this element of man-made stuff. Technological is our completely man-made stuff, so it's industrial accidents, air pollution, bus accidents, train accidents, stuff like that. Here's a question that you guys can think about. This would actually be really cool if you are watching this on YouTube, if you could comment your thoughts down below. That would be super awesome. So the question is, what makes someone vulnerable to natural disasters, right? So vulnerability is the potential for harm from a hazard. So what makes people have more potential to have harm from these disasters, right? What do you guys think? Put it down in the comments. I feel like I should say, like, hit that like button, subscribe or something, but whatever. You don't need to subscribe. But comment below if you have a thought and you'd love to share. I'd love it if you shared. Remember, this is still a class. I'm trying to make this like as normal as possible. It is kind of weird though, teaching from my living room. Anyway, moving on. So earthquakes. Hopefully you guys know what an earthquake is, right? So sudden violent movements of the earth, right, of the plates. We see these along fault lines as well as plate boundaries. One really famous plate boundary is the Ring of Fire. So the Ring of Fire is along that Pacific plate right here. And if you notice, so all these little red dots are earthquakes and all the black triangles are volcanoes. So this area has like the majority of the world's earthquakes and volcanoes. So it's known as the Ring of Fire, right? Which is always fun. So volcanoes, earthquakes, lots of that going on our Pacific Plate boundary. So earthquakes, of course, are natural disasters. If a place has a large enough earthquake, it's really hard for people to, as a society, recover from that. Sorry, my dog's doing weird stuff. Lucy, what are you doing? Anyway, Here's some more earthquakes. Check out this building. Look at that. Isn't that crazy? This is a map of the western United States and like how likely these places are to have like a larger earthquake based off of like frequent earthquakes that we've had. So lots of earthquakes, lots of fear about earthquakes in places like San Francisco, Wasatch Front, right here in Utah, like that. Now we are talking about South America, right? This unit. So with South America, we have. So I have a couple different maps. So over here, right, this is a chance of having like a really small earthquake, like small to medium, right, sized earthquake in 100 years, right? So we see where those plate boundaries are converging, right near the Andes mountain range. This other one is a chance of having like a moderate or greater, so like a bigger earthquake in the next 100 years. And then this one over here is showing, so the green dots are significant earthquakes, right? And 2010, there's a really big one in Chile. I remember that one being on the news. So they happen, it's not something super rare. They happen from time to time. With earthquakes, we also see tsunamis. This is a picture from the 2011 earthquake and tsunami that impacted Japan. So you can see, it gets really bad right up here by Japan. Right, Japan's right here. South America also gets tsunamis. Mostly we see them impacting Chile along the coasts. Right, so here's another kind of picture. Here's a picture of that 2011 one that happened in Japan as it was coming in and hitting the coast. Another natural disaster. Hey, no, come here. All right, guys, who's worse at stopping my train of thought, my dog or you guys? What do you think, huh? So volcanoes are mountains formed by lava or magma that break through the Earth's surface. So this is usually right with those subduction zones, and the majority of volcanoes we'll see along that ring of fire. Sometimes we see hot spots and like island chains. So if you guys were in class, I'd ask you, right, let's think of some examples, right? Where are those island chains? How are they made? You probably would say something like Hawaii, which would be a great example. So here's a map of different volcanoes in South America, right? So all along the Andes Mountains, we're going to see lots of volcanoes. And then on the Pacific coast, so we have the Peru-Chile Trench, right, which is where that subduction zone is, right, where it's going under. It creates a trench. Mass movements. So there's a couple different types, right? We have like things like soil creep, slumping, debris flows, rock falls. A lot of you probably just know a lot of these as just landslides. Some of these are slower than others, smaller scale, but all of them have potential to be a natural disaster. So I actually have a video that you guys can pull up this slideshow in Canvas and watch some of these videos if you want to. But there are some pretty crazy ones. um, where it's like the entire side of the mountain just is like an avalanche, but it's all just like dirt and boulders. They're pretty cool. Flooding. Flooding is something that impacts all areas of the world in different places. In the picture, I think this one's the Mississippi River flooded. This one's Brazil. So this is in 2011. The Amazon River actually floods pretty frequently, which is part of the reason why, right, there's so much plant life around the Amazon River, right? Lots of rainfall, lots of flooding, and it spreads around a lot of different nutrients. Here's another one. Flooding along the Mississippi near Cairo, Illinois in 2011. Kind of crazy, little farmhouse surrounded by water. I always thought these maps were super cool too. So these are like meandering river maps. So this map shows where when this map was made, where the current river was, and then it also shows like all the different routes it has taken. I don't know. I think it's super cool. Something I'd hang up on my wall, seeing where the river has changed. And this can be, floods can help to like change the course of the river, which can also be a problem because a lot of countries' boundaries are used. They use like larger rivers, and so right that can change with the river, and it can cause like a lot of political issues. Here's another picture of the Amazon River flooding in Brazil. So we see an entire town, right, flooded. All right, hurricanes. So this is one that you guys are probably fairly familiar with the past couple of years in the news. We've had quite a few large hurricanes hit the United States. So hurricanes, right, here's a little bit of like the science behind them, but you have warm air that rises, cold air that falls, and it creates, right, our spinning kind of tropical storm. And this shows, right, some other parts. If you ever heard like the eye of the storm, right, that's like right in the middle. It's usually pretty calm. You can see like the sun and stuff. I've heard it's pretty crazy. With hurricanes, one of the more dangerous things that happens is what's known as a storm surge. Essentially, when the hurricane's over the ocean, the wind like piles up the water and then like pushes it towards shore. So it's kind of like a tsunami that's created by a hurricane rather than like an earthquake. They're not as like tall usually as like tsunamis, but right, it's causing a lot of flooding. But waves push water inland faster than it can like drain back out to the ocean. Surge can happen before the storm hits, which can make it impossible for people to escape. Floating debris is going to be something that's like really scary and deadly, right? If there is a wooden telephone pole in the water and it comes hurtling at you in the water, right? Right, that can be a really big problem. And it can also damage things like foundations, which can weaken buildings, the safety with buildings. This is a map of hurricanes. I believe this is also from 2015. It's a little bit older. If you notice down here in South America, there's only like 2 little paths, right? So this is tracking like the paths of tropical storms and like hurricanes. I thought it was pretty cool. Right, here's some more. Hurricanes also have different names. Here in the Americas, we call them hurricanes. If you are in the Indian Ocean, they're cyclones. And if you are in like the Pacific up by Asia, they're typhoons. The same thing, just different names. We call them those names based off of like the ocean that they originate in. Tornadoes. This is something that occasionally we'll get a tornado in Utah, but usually they're not super huge or super powerful. But it is possible to get tornadoes here. Most of the tornadoes, though, we see in the middle of the United States, also known as Tornado Alley. So lots of tornadoes in Oklahoma, northern Texas, Kansas, Nebraska, that area. Right, once again, you got colder air, warm air meeting together. It's going to cause a twisting, right, with the storm. Here's another video if you want to watch a video that talks about like a tornado warning. Alright, so this last part, so I wanted to show you guys real quick. So I used to live in Smithfield, so I put that one on here. This one, I know it says Riverdale City, but it's actually the one for Weber County. So one thing that counties do, or cities can do, to prepare for different natural disasters is create a mitigation plan. So mitigation plans is essentially a plan that says if there was a disaster, this is what we would do. This is extremely important because then when the disaster hits, you know, people know what to do, where to go, you know, what the whole system is. So for example, the school has a mitigation plan. It's hung up by my door in my classroom. And it's just like, if there was a fire, you know, what do we do? All that kind of stuff. But yeah, this is the mitigation plan, and you can go through it and look at all the different things. There's a lot of things. Everything from like utilities system damage to highway damage to fire, you know, all that kind of stuff. There's some stuff that deals with schools. I actually thought it was pretty interesting as I was going through, because with this whole coronavirus thing, I was like, I wonder if they have something for like epidemics or pandemics, and they do. So it says Weber and Morgan counties could experience 100,000 individual influenza cases, 50,000 outpatient doctor visits, and 1,500 additional hospitalizations, 400 deaths from a pandemic. So, right, that's just saying, like, if there was something similar to the flu that went through, you know, 100,000 people in Weber County would probably get it. Half of those would go to the doctor. You know, 1,000 of those would need to be hospitalized, stuff like that. And then they have like different actions. Oh, sorry. And they go through and they talk about that. All right. So if you have any questions about what I just went through, please reach out and email me or message me through Canvas. I also will have these slides posted so that you can just click through them and read them if you wanted to go slower, watch those other videos that are part of it, or, you know, take notes. I also wanted to show you guys real quick. So, couple things, right? Look at the class calendar for the topic of the day. Hopefully you did that and that's how you found or saw this video. Watch my video, which you're doing right now. Great job. And if you need to go a little bit slower and click through the slideshow, go ahead and do that. And then you're going to complete the assignment for the day. So every day in class, right, if you have me on A days, you need to complete the assignment by midnight on the A day. If you have me on B days, midnight for B day. So if we go to South American Natural Disasters, that's this unit. And we go down to, sorry, I have like more stuff on here. You're going to be doing the Open Note South America quiz today. So this has a question about has some questions about things like maps, right? So what you're going to do, right? I have these numbers on this map. You're going to go through and, right, what's physical feature number 1, right? That's pointing to this mountain range. Number 2 is this little part in Chile, right? Number 3, it's up north. 4 is over here. 5's down here. So you're going to go and label them, right? And then there'll be the other questions similar to that, where I'm looking for, can you look at a map and tell me what it is? And then some stuff with natural disasters that I just talked about today. So, like I said, if you need any help or you have any questions, please reach out to me. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day.